This property is still under HOA jurisdiction. Victoria Brennan's voice cut across my ranch like a chainsaw through morning silence. I'm issuing you a mandatory compliance order for that barn I stood on my porch, coffee in hand. Watching this woman I hadn't seen in 3 years march up my gravel driveway like she still owned the place. The ankle monitor on her leg blinked red with every step, a warning she was violating her release terms. But what stopped me cold wasn't her audacity. It was the folder clutched under her arm. Official looking, fresh, filled with paperwork that shouldn't exist. Victoria. I said calmly, "The HOA was dissolved 3 years ago. Legally. Permanently. You signed the papers yourself." Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. That dissolution was fraudulent. Someone tampered with the filings. And I have proof that Silverwood Valley is still under my authority. She slapped the folder against her palm like a judge's gavel. Behind her, a dark sedan idled at the property line. Tinted windows. Engine running. Someone was watching this confrontation. Someone who wanted to see how I'd react. That's when I understood Victoria wasn't just delusional. Someone had armed her with lies big enough to start a war, and they'd aimed her straight at me. I'm Nathan Cross, third-generation rancher in Silverwood Valley, Colorado. This land has been in my family since 1947. Long before any HOA existed. Long before subdivisions carved up the open range into parcels regulated by people who measured grass height with rulers. Victoria Brennan had ruled Silverwood Valley HOA for 8 years before her arrest. 8 years of tyranny disguised as community standards. Fines for mailbox colors. Citations for children's toys left in yards. Threats of legal action for anyone who dared plant flowers she didn't approve. She turned neighborhood life into a police state. And when residents finally fought back, when they discovered she'd been embezzling HOA funds to pay for her lifestyle, she went to prison for fraud and abuse of authority. The HOA dissolved during her incarceration. The community voted unanimously to terminate the organization, void all bylaws, and auction off common properties to settle debts. I bought most of those parcels legally at county auction. 18 homes she'd foreclosed on over petty violations. 5 easements. 3 common areas. The old HOA office building. And utility lots she'd claimed gave her oversight authority over private properties. For 3 years, Silverwood Valley had breathed freely. People painted their houses whatever colors made them happy. Gardens bloomed in wild, beautiful chaos. Kids rode bikes without parents fearing clipboard-wielding enforcers. The valley healed until this morning, when Victoria Brennan stepped out of prison and apparently straight back into delusion. She didn't come alone that first day. The sedan followed her everywhere, a shadow with tinted windows and an engine that purred with expensive patience. And she carried that folder like it was scripture, pulling out documents to wave at anyone who questioned her authority. "This barn," she declared, pointing at my newly renovated structure, "exceeds HOA height restrictions. You'll receive formal demolition orders within 72 hours. There are no HOA restrictions." I replied, "Not anymore." Wrong. She flipped open her folder, revealing pages stamped with the old Silverwood Valley HOA seal. These bylaws remain in effect. The dissolution was improperly filed. I have documentation proving the paperwork was incomplete. I studied her carefully. 3 years in prison should have broken her obsession with control. Instead, she'd emerged more convinced than ever of her authority. Someone had fed her this narrative. Someone who needed chaos in Silverwood Valley. Who gave you those documents? I asked. Her jaw tightened. A legal consultant who understands property law better than small-town ranchers. A consultant. I let the word hang there. Does this consultant have a name? That's confidential HOA business. She snapped the folder shut. You'll comply with inspection procedures. Or I'll escalate enforcement actions. Sheriff Daniels' cruiser rolled up my drive then. Gravel crunching under tires. He'd been monitoring Victoria's ankle monitor alerts since her release that morning. 6 violations in 4 hours. Miss Brennan. Daniels said evenly. You're outside your approved residential zone. Again. Victoria whirled on him with that same imperious glare that had cowed so many residents during her reign. I'm performing official HOA duties. My parole officer was informed. Your parole officer. Daniels replied. Says you're supposed to be at your sister's house in town. Not conducting inspections on private property 40 miles outside your permitted area. The ankle monitor shrieked, then a harsh electronic alarm that echoed across my ranch. Victoria flinched, but didn't retreat. This community needs me. She insisted. Standards have collapsed. Properties are falling into disrepair. Someone has to restore order. I noticed her gaze kept drifting to that idling sedan. Checking for approval, waiting for instructions, the tinted window never rolled down. But I felt eyes watching. Measuring. Calculating. Miss Brennan. Daniel said. Step back to the public road. Now, for a moment. I thought she might actually comply. Then she took 3 deliberate steps deeper onto my property, lifted her phone, and began photographing my barn. Structural hazard. She muttered into her phone's recording app. Non-compliant height. Illegal construction without HOA permits. Ma'am. Daniels warned, hand moving toward his radio. Victoria ignored him. Circling my barn like a predator. Snapping photos. Narrating violations that existed only in her manufactured reality. The ankle monitor screamed continuously now. A piercing wail that brought my ranch hands out of the equipment shed to see what was happening. Unauthorized agricultural structures. Victoria continued, her voice rising. Unapproved fencing. Non-standard paint colors. All violations of Silverwood Valley HOA covenants that this man thinks he can ignore just because the HOA is dead. I interrupted, my patience finally cracking. You signed its death certificate yourself 3 years ago. Before you went to prison. Before you lost everything. That stopped her. Not because she believed me, but because the truth hit something raw beneath her delusion. That's a lie. She hissed. A conspiracy orchestrated by people who wanted me gone. But I'm back, and I'm going to prove that every dissolution filing was fraudulent. Sheriff Daniels spoke into his radio dispatch. I need parole enforcement at the Cross Ranch. Violation of release terms in progress. The sedan's engine revved slightly. Then the vehicle began backing away slowly, deliberately, abandoning Victoria now that law enforcement had arrived. She noticed, and for just a second, something like fear crossed her face, but she recovered quickly. Pulling more documents from her folder. I have proof, she declared. Waving papers at Daniels, proof that the HOA was never properly dissolved. proof that Nathan Cross illegally acquired HOA property. Proof that the parole unit arrived, then 2 officers stepping out with practiced efficiency. They'd clearly dealt with Victoria before. "Miss Brennan," one said firmly, "you're coming with us." "No." She clutched her folder tighter. "I have work to do. Community work. HOA business that can't wait." But the decision had already been made. The officers guided her toward their vehicle. Professional but unyielding. She didn't fight physically, but her voice rose to a shriek that carried across the valley. This isn't over. The HOA still exists, and when the truth comes out, you'll all answer for ignoring my authority. The door shut with a hollow thud. The vehicle rolled away. Dust trailing behind it like smoke from a retreating army. Sheriff Daniels stayed behind, hands on his hips, watching the taillights fade. "What's your read on this?" "Nathan, she's being used," I said. "Someone gave her that folder. Someone convinced her the HOA's still alive, because I own what the HOA used to control." I replied, 18 properties, 5 easements, common areas. If someone can prove the dissolution was fraudulent, they can challenge my ownership. Daniels exhaled slowly. "Land grab." "Exactly. You see that sedan?" I nodded. "Tinted windows. Expensive. Watching the whole time. Get me the vehicle description. I'll run it through the system." He paused. "Nathan, if someone's pulling strings behind Victoria, they're playing a dangerous game. She's unstable enough to do real damage." "I know," I said, "which is why we need to find out who's manipulating her before she escalates." But escalation was already coming. Because Victoria Brennan didn't just believe she still had authority. She believed she had a mission. And someone out there was making absolutely certain she stayed convinced. The question wasn't whether she'd come back. It was what she'd do next. And who would get hurt when she did. By the next morning, every mailbox in Silverwood Valley had a notice stuffed inside. Printed on official-looking letterhead with the old HOA seal. Mandatory HOA compliance review. All residents must submit property inspection requests within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and enforcement actions. Signed, President V. Brennan, Silverwood Valley, HOA. My phone started ringing at 6:45 a.m. Sarah Mitchell, first retired teacher. Lived in the valley for 20 years. "Nathan?" She came to my door this morning, before sunrise, demanding to inspect my garden. She said my roses violate frontage uniformity standards and threatened me with a $500 fine. Then Tom Patterson, she filmed my kids' bikes in the driveway. Said toys left visible from the street are violations. Nathan. My kids are terrified. Then Maria Santos, she put a citation on my mailbox claiming the color is unauthorized. It's been blue for 15 years. The calls kept coming. 10 residents in 2 hours. All reporting the same nightmare, Victoria Brennan marching through the valley with her clipboard. Hair fuller. And that unshakable conviction that she still ruled Silverwood. I drove into town to find her. Didn't take long. She stood in the middle of Maple Street, blocking traffic, photographing houses like she was documenting war crimes. The ankle monitor blinked its continuous warning, but she'd stopped acknowledging it entirely. Victoria. I called out, parking my truck at the curb. You need to stop this. She turned, and for the first time, I saw what she was wearing beneath the county issue jacket she discarded on someone's fence post. A crimson red blazer, tailored and expensive, worn over a black silk top with a V-neck that looked distinctly out of place for someone supposedly just released from prison. A pencil skirt in matching crimson. Red heels that clicked against asphalt with each step. Her wine-brown hair fell in waves past her shoulders, styled carefully despite the morning hour. Red lipstick perfectly applied. She dressed for this. Dressed for the role she believed she still played. I'm restoring order, she declared, gesturing at the houses around us. This valley has descended into chaos. Non-compliant structures everywhere. Unauthorized modifications. Violations stacked upon violations. The HOA is dissolved. I said, these aren't violations. These are people living freely. Freely, she laughed. Sharp and bitter. Freedom without structure is anarchy. These people need guidance. They need standards. They need someone willing to enforce the rules when everyone else is too weak to do what's necessary. I noticed the sedan again, parked 2 blocks away, engine running, watching. Who's in that car? Victoria. Her expression flickered. That's none of your concern. It is when they're using you to destabilize this valley. She stepped closer, voice dropping to something almost confessional. No one is using me. I'm finally getting justice. Someone finally had the courage to show me the truth about what happened while I was imprisoned. The falsified paperwork. The illegal property transfers. The conspiracy to steal HOA assets. What conspiracy? She pulled out her folder again, this time revealing documents that looked far more professional than anything she should have had access to. Legal briefs, property records, highlighted sections of dissolution filings, and there, at the bottom of one page, I saw a law firm stamp Sterling and Associates, property law specialists, Sterling, Richard Sterling. The developer who'd tried to buy half of Silverwood Valley 5 years ago through pressure tactics and predatory contracts, the same developer who'd filed multiple lawsuits when the HOA collapsed, trying to claim he had rights to common area parcels. Lawsuits that had been dismissed when judges found his claims baseless. Sterling had disappeared after his legal defeats, supposedly moving operations to Wyoming. But clearly, he'd never stopped watching Silverwood Valley, never stopped waiting for an opportunity to reclaim what he thought should have been his. And Victoria Brennan, unstable, desperate, obsessed with reclaiming lost authority, was the perfect weapon. Sterling's behind this. I said. Victoria's jaw tightened. Mr. Sterling is a respected legal consultant who understands property law better than corrupt local officials. He's helping me expose the fraud that destroyed the HOA. He's manipulating you. He's helping me. She snapped. Unlike everyone else who abandoned me, unlike you, who stole HOA property while I couldn't defend it. I didn't steal anything. I bought it legally at auction. An auction that shouldn't have happened. She hissed. Because the dissolution was fraudulent. The ankle monitor shrieked again. This time, Sheriff Daniels' cruiser appeared within seconds. Having been tracking her movements since yesterday's violation, Miss Brennan, Daniels said, You're in violation again. And now you're blocking traffic. Victoria didn't move. Instead, she addressed the small crowd that had gathered, residents watching with a mixture of fear and anger. This man, she pointed at Daniels, is protecting a criminal. Nathan Cross stole your community property. He manipulated the dissolution process. And he's been illegally collecting rent from properties that still belong to the HOA. That's a lie. I said evenly. Prove it, she screamed. Show everyone your legal purchase documents. Show them how you stole 18 homes and 5 easements. Show them how you conspired with corrupt county officials to... I'll show them. I interrupted. Tomorrow. Public meeting at the Valley Community Center. I'll bring every deed, every purchase receipt, every county filing. Complete transparency? That stopped her. Not because she doubted herself, but because I'd just called her bluff. You think I won't come? She asked. I'm counting on it. I replied, because the Valley deserves to see the truth. All of it. The sedan pulled away then. Its mission apparently complete. Victoria noticed but said nothing. Just clutched her folder tighter and marched toward the next house on her list. Sheriff Daniels watched her go, then turned to me. You sure about this public meeting? She's going to escalate no matter what we do. I said, at least this way. We control the narrative. And Sterling, he'll make a mistake. I predicted. He always does. But what I didn't predict was how quickly Victoria would unravel, or how dangerous she'd become when desperation finally overtook delusion. Because that night, at 3:14 a.m., my security cameras caught her sneaking onto my property with spray paint and a crowbar, determined to prove her authority, the only way she knew how, through destruction. The motion alert woke me instantly. Years of ranching had trained me to respond to unusual sounds, unusual movements. Anything that didn't belong in the rhythm of night, I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, pulled up the security feed, and there she was. Victoria Brennan, ankle monitor blinking like a dying heartbeat, creeping across my gravel driveway with a spray paint can in one hand and her phone in the other. She moved with the jerky determination of someone who'd stopped caring about consequences. Someone whose belief in her mission had overridden every survival instinct. She aimed her phone at my barn, whispering into it like she was narrating a documentary only she could see. Evidence of structural violations, she murmured. Unauthorized construction. Hazardous non-compliance requiring immediate HOA intervention. Then she raised the spray paint can. I watched from my bedroom window as red paint sprayed across the barn door in aggressive, messy strokes. She was writing something, a message meant to be seen, meant to be undeniable proof of her authority, condemned by HOA. Demolition ordered. President V. Brennan. She stepped back to admire her work, filming it with shaking hands, narrating her justification into the phone's camera. This property owner has ignored multiple warnings. This structure is unsafe. As HOA president, I am authorized to take emergency action when community safety is compromised. I didn't go outside. Not yet. I let the cameras record every second. Let the timestamps burn themselves into evidence files. Let her document her own violation in high-definition clarity. At 3:17 a.m., her ankle monitor began shrieking. The sound cut through the night like an alarm bell. Harsh and unmistakable. She flinched but kept filming. The monitoring device is malfunctioning. She told her phone, "It doesn't understand that I'm performing official duties." At 3:19, 7 headlights crested the hill. The parole enforcement unit. Their vehicle rolling fast. Gravel spraying from under the tires. 2 officers emerged, moving with practiced urgency. "Miss Brennan," one shouted. "Stop what you're doing. Hands where we can see them." The paint can clattered to the ground, rolling until it bumped against her red heel. She stared at it like the betrayal came from the object itself, rather than her actions. "This isn't criminal," she insisted, voice rising. "This is community enforcement. This barn violates multiple safety codes. As president, I have the authority. You don't have authority," the officer interrupted. "And you're violating the terms of your release." Again, I stepped out onto my porch then, boots crunching on gravel. The barn door glowed red under my security lights. Her message crooked and furious, shouting her delusion across the valley even in darkness. She looked up at me, and something in her expression shifted. Not shame, desperation mixed with righteous fury. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You stole the HOA? You destroyed the community." I didn't destroy anything," I said quietly. "The HOA destroyed itself through corruption, abuse, and your embezzlement." "Lies!" she screamed. "All lies told by people who wanted me gone." One officer approached me. "Mr. Cross, your security system caught this. Every second," I confirmed, "including her trespassing, vandalism, and continued claims of authority she doesn't possess." He nodded, making notes. "We'll need copies for the violation hearing." Victoria's posture stiffened. Indignation swelling like a storm. "You're arresting the wrong person. Nathan Cross is the criminal. He illegally acquired AOA property. He falsified dissolution documents." "Miss Brennan," the officer said firmly, "you need to stop talking." But she couldn't stop. The words poured out of her like poison that had been building pressure for 3 years. The HOA bylaws allow emergency action when structures are deemed unsafe. I reviewed the records. I checked the files. This barn violates height restrictions, setback requirements, and there are no bylaws. I said, "Not anymore." Her face twisted with something half rage, half disbelief. "The dissolution wasn't valid. I've seen the documents. The filings were incomplete. Someone tampered with the records." She pointed directly at me. "Someone who benefited when the HOA fell apart." And there it was again, the invisible hand behind her delusion, feeding her lines, feeding her purpose, feeding her the belief that she was fighting for justice rather than being used as a weapon. The officers began guiding her toward their vehicle. She jerked away, voice rising to a shriek that echoed across the valley. "You're all blind. When the truth comes out, you'll answer for ignoring my authority." The ankle monitor emitted another violation alert, a robotic voice ordering her to return to her authorized zone immediately. She didn't comply. The officers secured her wrists not with force, just procedure, and placed her in the back seat. Through the window, I watched her press her forehead against the glass, lips moving in what looked like either prayer or continued narration of her persecution. By then, lights had flickered on in distant houses. A few residents stepped outside. Confused and worried, Sarah Mitchell clutched her robe at the end of her driveway. Tom Patterson stood on his porch with his wife, arms wrapped protectively around each other. Everyone saw the red graffiti. Everyone heard the screaming. Everyone felt the echo of something they'd hoped they'd never experience again. Fear of the woman who once controlled their lives. But this time, the fear carried something else too. Anger. Cold. Focused. The kind that grows in people who've had enough. Sheriff Daniels arrived last, driving slowly, reading the scene before stepping out. He walked to the barn, studying the message with a long exhale. "She's escalating," he said. "She's being pushed." I corrected. He gave me a look that said he'd already reached the same conclusion. Someone gave her those documents, made her think the dissolution was fraudulent. Richard Sterling. I said, "His law firm stamp is on her paperwork." Daniels nodded once. "We'll look into it." "But Nathan, you understand what's happening here. She's not going to stop. Not until someone forces her to." "I know," I said, "which is why tomorrow's meeting is critical. The Valley needs to see the truth. All of it." As the parole unit transported Victoria away, her voice carried through the vehicle's closed windows one last time. "You can't erase the HOA. You can't erase me." Then the taillights disappeared into darkness, leaving behind only the red paint dripping down my barn door and the heavy silence of a valley that understood the worst wasn't over yet. I photographed everything: the graffiti, the discarded paint can, the footprints in the gravel showing her exact path. Every detail mattered. Every timestamp. Every angle. Daniels approached me with his hands in his pockets. "She believes she's still president. She believes you're the criminal. And she believes someone out there is going to validate her worldview. Sterling's counting on it." I said, "He needs chaos. Needs the Valley questioning ownership. Needs me tied up in legal challenges instead of defending what's mine. Then, tomorrow, we end it," Daniels said. "We show everyone exactly what happened to the HOA, who bought the property, and who's been pulling strings behind Victoria's breakdown." I nodded, but something cold settled in my chest. Because Victoria wasn't done. People like her never were. They escalated until something or someone stopped them permanently. The question wasn't whether she'd strike again. It was how soon, and how much damage she'd cause before the Valley finally found peace. By sunrise, word had spread across Silverwood Valley like wildfire through dry grass. Every resident knew about the vandalism. The 3A. M. Confrontation. Victorious arrest. And every resident received the same anonymous email at 6:30 a.m. Urgent Community Property Rights Meeting. Today. Iki p.m. Valley Community Center. Learn the truth about illegal HOA dissolution and fraudulent property transfers. Your rights may have been stolen. Come hear the evidence. Concerned citizens for Silverwood Valley Justice. I recognized the strategy immediately. Sterling was forcing the confrontation before I could control the narrative. He wanted residents angry, confused, desperate for answers. Wanted them vulnerable to manipulation. My phone rang. Sarah Mitchell. Nathan. "Did you see the email?" I saw it. Half the valley is panicking. People are asking if their homes are in jeopardy, if the HOA can come back, if property values will collapse. Someone is weaponizing fear. "Sterling," I said. "He's making his move. Then, we need to be ready. I'm gathering every resident who remembers what the HOA was really like. We're going to that meeting. And we're going to make sure the truth is louder than Sterling's lies. By 1:45 p.m. The Valley Community Center parking lot was packed. Cars lined both sides of Mountain View Road. Residents clustered in nervous groups, whispering, speculating, waiting inside. Someone had set up a podium, a projector screen, and rows of folding chairs. Professional setup, expensive equipment. Sterling wasn't hiding anymore. I arrived with Sarah, Tom Patterson, and Maria Santos, residents who'd lived through Victoria's tyranny and remembered every violation, every fine, every threat. We carried boxes of documents, deeds, purchase receipts, county filings, dissolution paperwork. Every piece of evidence proving the HOA's legal death and my legitimate ownership. The room filled quickly. 87 residents by my count. Some faces I recognized. Others were newer arrivals who'd moved to Silverwood after the HOA dissolved. People who'd never experienced Victoria's rule but now feared its resurrection at exactly 2 p.m. Victoria entered through the side door. She'd changed clothes. Still wore that crimson blazer, perfectly tailored, paired with the black silk top that made her look more like a corporate executive than a felon on parole. The pencil skirt, the red heels clicking against linoleum, the wine-brown hair styled in waves that framed her face, red lipstick applied with precision despite spending the morning in custody. She dressed for war, but she wasn't alone. Behind her walked a man in an expensive gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most residents earned in a month. Tall, late 50s, silver hair, perfectly groomed, smile practiced and predatory. Richard Sterling. The room's energy shifted instantly. Whispers died. People straightened in their chairs. Those who recognized Sterling from his previous attempts to control Silverwood Valley tensed visibly. Victoria approached the podium with that same rigid confidence, that same unshakable belief in her authority. She tapped the microphone twice. "Residents of Silverwood Valley," she began. Voice amplified across the room. "Thank you for coming. For 3 years. You've been living under a lie. A conspiracy orchestrated to destroy your community protections, your property rights, your home values." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Silverwood Valley Homeowners Association, she continued, was never legally dissolved. The paperwork was fraudulent. The auctions were illegal. And one man, she pointed directly at me, profited from that fraud by acquiring HOA property he had no right to purchase. I stood calmly, letting her speak, letting her dig herself deeper. Sterling stepped forward then, opening his briefcase and pulling out a stack of documents. "My name is Richard Sterling," he announced. "I'm a property law specialist who's been investigating irregularities in the HOA dissolution process. What I've discovered is deeply troubling." He clicked a button on a remote, and the projector screen lit up with an image of dissolution paperwork. But something was wrong with it. Sections were highlighted, marked with red circles, arrows pointing to supposedly missing information. "This document," Sterling said, "is supposed to contain board affidavits confirming unanimous consent for dissolution. But as you can see, he zoomed in on blank spaces. Those affidavits are missing, which means the dissolution was never properly completed. Gasps from the audience. Fear spreading like disease. Furthermore, Sterling continued, clicking to the next slide. The property auctions that followed were conducted with improper notice. Residents weren't informed of their rights to purchase HOA assets. Instead, one individual, Nathan Cross, acquired the majority of properties in what appears to be a coordinated takeover. More whispers. Some residents looking at me with suspicion now. Doubt creeping into eyes that had been friendly just hours ago. Victoria seized the momentum. Nathan Cross stole your community assets. He manipulated county officials. And for 3 years, he's been profiting from property that should still belong to the HOA. That's when I stood up. May I respond? I asked calmly. Victoria's jaw tightened. This is an official presentation of lies. I finished, and the Valley deserves to hear the truth. Sterling smiled that practiced corporate smile. Of course. Mr. Cross, we believe in transparency. Please, share your perspective. I walked to the front of the room, carrying a single folder. Sarah followed with a laptop and projector. Within seconds, we'd replace Sterling's presentation with our own. Let's start with facts. I said, the Silverwood Valley HOA was dissolved on June 15th. 3 years ago. Not fraudulently, not improperly, legally, with full board approval, county oversight, and resident notification. I clicked to the first slide, the dissolution filing. Complete and unaltered. Mr. Sterling showed you a document with missing affidavits. I continued. What he didn't tell you is that someone removed those pages. Someone who wanted to create doubt about the dissolution's validity. I clicked to the next slide, a photograph of the complete dissolution binder from the county archives. Every affidavit present. Every signature verified. These are the original documents. I said, stored in county records where no one can tamper with them. Every board member signed, including Victoria Brennan herself. The projection showed her signature, large and undeniable, next to her sworn statement supporting dissolution to protect board members from further liability related to organizational financial irregularities. Victoria went pale. That's been altered. It hasn't. I said, it's a certified copy from the county clerk's office, complete with official seals and timestamps. You voted to dissolve the HOA. Victoria, you signed your name to end it. Because you were facing criminal charges for embezzlement and abuse of authority. The room erupted in whispers. I clicked to the next slide, court documents from Victoria's trial. 3 years ago, Victoria Brennan was convicted of embezzling $73,000 in HOA funds, falsifying violation notices to extort residents, and abuse of authority. She served her sentence and was released on parole last week. Sterling tried to interrupt. The dissolution process is separate from. The dissolution happened because of her crimes. I said, the remaining board members voted to terminate the organization to protect residents from further liability. That vote was unanimous, legal, final. Next slide, auction notices published in the county newspaper, posted on the HOA office door, mailed to every resident's address. The property auctions were announced publicly with 30 days notice. Any resident could bid. Many did. I purchased 18 properties because I had the capital and because someone needed to prevent them from falling into foreclosure. More slides, my purchase receipts, proof of payment to county auction accounts, deed transfers recorded officially, property taxes paid continuously for 3 years. Every transaction was transparent, legal, and documented. I said, I didn't steal anything. I bought property at public auction that no one else wanted. Victoria's hands trembled against the podium. You manipulated the process. I participated legally. I corrected. Unlike you, who's now being manipulated by someone with an agenda of his own. I turned to Sterling. Why don't you tell the Valley about your interest in Silverwood properties, about the lawsuits you filed trying to claim rights to common areas, lawsuits that were dismissed because judges found your claims baseless? Sterling's practiced smile faltered. My legal actions were predatory. I finished. You wanted to develop these properties. When the HOA collapsed, you lost your leverage. So now you're using Victoria, a desperate, unstable woman fresh out of prison, to create chaos and challenge ownership you couldn't acquire legally. The room's energy shifted again. Now people were looking at Sterling with suspicion. Recognition dawning in faces that remembered his previous attempts to control Silverwood. That's absurd. Victoria insisted. Mr. Sterling is helping me expose. He's using you. I said gently. He gave you those documents with missing pages. He convinced you the dissolution was fraudulent. He aimed you at me like a weapon because he knew you'd believe anything that validated your need to reclaim power you lost through your own crimes. Her expression cracked then, not with understanding, but with desperate fury. No, the HOA still exists. I'm still president, and when the courts review this evidence, there is no evidence. Sarah Mitchell interrupted, standing beside me. I've reviewed every document Sterling provided you. They're either altered, incomplete, or taken out of context. The dissolution is legally binding. The HOA is dead, and you're being manipulated by a man who sees you as expendable. Victoria looked at Sterling then. Something like uncertainty crossing her face for the first time. Mr. Sterling, tell them about the fraud. About the conspiracy? Sterling was already backing toward the door. Mr. Sterling Victoria's voice rose. Where are you going? He didn't answer. He simply left, abandoning her in front of 87 witnesses. His exit more damning than any accusation I could make. Victoria stood alone at the podium, folder clutched to her chest. Red lipstick, suddenly looking garish under fluorescent lights. Crimson blazer, no longer a uniform of authority, but a costume worn by someone playing a role no one believed anymore. He said he had proof, she whispered. He said he'd help me. He lied, I said, not cruelly, just factually. And now he's left you to face consequences alone. Sheriff Daniels stepped forward from his position at the back of the room. Miss Brennan, I need you to come with me. Between the vandalism last night and the allegations you've made today using falsified documents, there are additional charges that need to be addressed. No. She backed away from the podium. You're all conspirators, all trying to erase me. The ankle monitor began shrieking again. This community needs me, Victoria screamed. Without the HOA, without rules, without standards. Everything falls apart. Can't you see that? Can't you understand what happens when there's no authority? We've been free for 3 years, Tom Patterson said from his seat. And we've been fine. Better than fine. Happy. Wrong, Victoria's voice cracked. You're living in chaos. In anarchy. In peace. Maria Santos added quietly. For the first time in years, we're living in peace. Victoria looked around the room then. Really looked at the faces staring back at her. Not with fear this time. With pity. With exhaustion. With the collective understanding that she'd become irrelevant. That was what finally broke her. Not the arrest. Not the evidence. Not Sterling's abandonment. But the realization that Silverwood Valley had healed without her. That the community had thrived in her absence. That her iron grip on power had been the disease, not the cure. She sank into a chair. Folder slipping from her hands. Papers scattering across the floor. The ankle monitor continued its relentless alarm. But she no longer seemed to hear it. Daniels approached carefully. Miss Brennan. It's time. She didn't fight. Didn't scream. Just let herself be guided toward the exit. Shoulders slumped. Red heels dragging against linoleum. The woman who'd once ruled through fear, now leaving as a ghost of delusion and manipulation. As the door closed behind her, the community center fell into heavy silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room erupted in applause, not for victory, but for relief, for truth, for the confirmation that they were truly, finally free. I gathered my documents, hands shaking slightly with adrenaline I'd been suppressing for 2 hours. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. You did it. We all did. I corrected, but the victory felt incomplete. Because Victoria was gone. Sterling had escaped. And somewhere out there, a predatory developer was calculating his next move. Sheriff Daniels approached me as the crowd dispersed. Nathan. Sterling's firm is based in Wyoming. I can't touch him without evidence of direct criminal action. He gave Victoria falsified documents. I said. Documents she presented, Daniels corrected. He'll claim she altered them herself, that he was merely consulting, that any errors were her responsibility. He's insulated himself, so he gets away with it. Daniels exhaled slowly. For now. But Nathan, you've removed his weapon. Victoria can't challenge your property anymore. The Valley knows the truth. Sterling lost this round. Even if he doesn't face charges. I nodded. But something cold remained in my chest. Because men like Sterling don't give up. They regroup. They wait. They look for new vulnerabilities. But Silverwood Valley wasn't vulnerable anymore. Not while residents stood together. Not while the truth was documented. Certified, and impossible to erase. As I walked out into December sunlight, I looked across the valley that had been my family's home for 4 generations. Mountains rising in the distance, cottonwood swaying in winter breeze, houses with different colored mailboxes and wildflower gardens and children's toys scattered in yards. Freedom looked messy, beautiful, real, and it was ours. Finally, completely, ours. The Valley didn't need an HOA. It needed neighbors who chose community over control. And that's exactly what we'd become. Victoria Brennan's hearing took place 1 week later. I didn't attend, didn't need to. Sheriff Daniels called afterward to deliver the verdict, parole revoked. Additional charges for vandalism and filing false legal claims. Sentence extended. She'd be gone for a long time. She asked about the HOA one last time. Daniel said, "Ask the judge if it still existed." He had to explain to her 3 times that it was gone forever before she stopped asking. Some people can't let go. I said, and some people get buried by what they can't release. Daniels replied, "As for Richard Sterling, he vanished back to Wyoming. His firm stopped returning calls. His property interests in Colorado were quietly sold off. He'd learned what Victoria never could, that Silverwood Valley wouldn't be controlled anymore. Not by fear. Not by manipulation. Not by men in expensive suits with predatory smiles." The valley held a celebration the following Saturday. Not a formal event, just neighbors gathering at the old community barn I'd restored, bringing food and stories and relief that lingered like good weather. Kids ran through December afternoon light while adults talked about plans for spring gardens. Plans that would never need approval from anyone except themselves. Sarah Mitchell approached me with a glass of homemade cider. "You ever worry Sterling will come back? He might." I admitted, "But he won't find the same valley. We're stronger now." "United?" She nodded. "You know what the best part is? We're not united against Victoria anymore. We're just together, building something instead of fighting something." That night, alone on my porch with coffee cooling in my hand, I looked at the barn where red paint had once screamed Victoria's delusion. We'd sanded it away, restained the wood, made it new. No trace remained of her final desperate attempt to claim authority she'd lost years before she ever realized. The valley was quiet. Not the tense quiet of fear, but the peaceful quiet of land at rest, of community breathing freely, of people who'd learned that sometimes the best governance is no governance at all, just neighbors choosing kindness over rules, understanding over enforcement, freedom over control. My phone buzzed. Text from Tom Patterson. "Kids want to build a sledding hill on the old common area land. That okay with you?" I smiled and typed back, "It's everyone's land now. Build away." Because that's what Silverwood Valley had become. Not Nathan Cross's kingdom. Not Victoria Brennan's dictatorship. Not Richard Sterling's development opportunity. Just home. For everyone. Finally. And somewhere out there, beyond the mountains, Victoria Brennan sat in a cell, probably still believing the HOA existed, still clutching her certainty like a lifeline, never understanding that communities don't need rulers. They just need neighbors willing to care for each other without demanding control in return. Justice doesn't always look like courtrooms and convictions. Sometimes it looks like valleys, where people plant wildflowers without asking permission, where children build snowmen in yards without measuring setback requirements, where neighbors wave across fences, painted whatever colors make them smile. That's the justice Silverwood Valley chose. And no HOA president. No manipulative developer. No amount of falsified documents could ever take it away again. Freedom, I'd learned, wasn't the absence of rules. It was the presence of choice. And Silverwood Valley had finally chosen itself.